rumor that could break. The NBA. The NBA may be standing on the edge of the most unbelievable superstar alliance in league history. LeBron James, Steve Kerr, and Draymond Green, three names that defined an entire basketball generation, could suddenly end up wearing the same uniform. But behind the explosive headlines, private conversations, and public recruiting pitches is a complicated truth that could either create one final dynasty or destroy Golden State's future. After 8 seasons in Los Angeles, LeBron reportedly decided that his next NBA chapter would not be written with the Lakers. At 41 years old, he was no longer searching for another massive contract or long-term rebuilding project. He wanted meaningful basketball, a positive environment, and one final legitimate opportunity to compete for a championship. The moment that message reached the league, nearly every contender began calculating how it could bring the 4-time champion into its locker room. But Golden State did more than calculate. Draymond Green reportedly opened the door through his personal relationship with LeBron. Their friendship, business connections, and recent golf trip immediately triggered speculation. Then Draymond made the fantasy sound real. LeBron playing beside Curry in the system that changed modern basketball. Curry added even more fuel. He publicly acknowledged how extraordinary the partnership could be, reminding everyone that he and LeBron had already proven their chemistry while representing Team USA. Curry's shooting creates space that LeBron has rarely experienced, while LeBron's passing could generate open looks that would terrify every defense in the league. Yet the Warriors' dream came with a hidden condition. Golden State reportedly believed LeBron might need more than Curry and Draymond to choose the Bay Area. The organization began exploring another blockbuster move, one involving Anthony Davis. That is where this story becomes dangerous, because bringing Davis to Golden State could require Jimmy Butler, multiple draft picks, and years of future flexibility. The Warriors were not simply chasing one legendary player. They were considering risking almost everything to build the oldest and most fascinating super team basketball has ever seen. Where are you watching from today? Comment 1 if you believe LeBron should join Curry, or 2 if Golden State should protect its future. Subscribe now, because the next part reveals the enormous price the Warriors may have to pay. Golden State's all-in recruitment. Golden State's pursuit did not begin with a formal contract offer. It began with relationships, timing, and a calculated attempt to make LeBron James imagine a basketball life he had never experienced before. Draymond Green reportedly became the first major voice inside the organization to push the idea forward. His connection with LeBron gave the Warriors something most teams could not manufacture: trust. Draymond was not speaking to James like a front office executive selling a presentation. He was speaking as a friend, a competitor, and someone who understood what it feels like to spend more than a decade chasing championships under constant pressure. The pitch was simple but powerful. Come to Golden State. Play beside Steve Kerr. Compete in a system built around intelligence, movement, passing, and championship experience. Stop carrying every possession and allow the game to become easier again. For LeBron, that message could have been incredibly attractive. At his age, conserving energy would be just as important as producing points. Curry's gravity could remove defenders from the paint, creating driving lanes LeBron had not consistently seen in years. Draymond could handle defensive communication and secondary playmaking, allowing James to choose when to take control instead of forcing him to dominate every minute. Then Curry publicly entered the conversation. Curry rarely behaves like a desperate recruiter. That made his willingness to discuss LeBron so significant. He did not need to promise James celebrity, money, or attention. Both men already possessed more than enough of all three. Curry could offer something far more valuable: basketball freedom. Their performance with Team USA had already provided evidence. They were no longer historic rivals fighting across 4 NBA finals. They were teammates reading each other's movements, creating easy opportunities, and celebrating the same victory. The chemistry was not theoretical. Millions of fans had watched it happen. But Golden State understood that friendship and Olympic memories might not be enough. LeBron wanted to win, and the Warriors roster contained major uncertainty. Jimmy Butler was recovering from a serious injury, the Western Conference remained brutally competitive, and the organization lacked the financial flexibility to casually add another superstar. To transform the dream into a true championship plan, Golden State needed a second move. It needed a player LeBron trusted completely, someone who had already helped him reach the top. That player was Anthony Davis. The Anthony Davis domino. The possibility of Anthony Davis joining Golden State changed the story from an emotional reunion into a dangerous organizational gamble. LeBron and Davis had already demonstrated what they could accomplish together. Their partnership delivered a championship to Los Angeles in 2020, with Davis providing elite defense, interior scoring, and the ability to dominate without demanding control of every possession. If the Warriors could place that partnership beside Stephen Curry, they would create a lineup containing three of the most difficult strategic problems in basketball. Defenses would face an impossible choice: send extra help toward Curry, and LeBron could attack a weakened interior. Build a wall against LeBron, and Curry would receive the smallest opening he needed to release from deep. Switch smaller defenders onto Davis, and Golden State could punish the mismatch inside, play traditional coverage, and Draymond Green could operate as another passer from the middle of the floor. On paper, it looked unstoppable, but basketball fantasies are built on highlights. Trades are built on contracts, leverage, and sacrifice. Washington reportedly understood how badly Golden State needed Davis to strengthen its pitch to LeBron. That gave the Wizards enormous negotiating power. They did not have to accept a convenient offer. They could demand the type of return capable of changing the direction of their franchise. The reported asking price was severe: Jimmy Butler, multiple first-round picks, future pick swaps, and additional draft compensation. Golden State would not merely be exchanging one veteran star for another. It would be surrendering many of the assets needed to survive after Curry, Green, LeBron, and Davis eventually retired. Butler's contract made him the logical salary-matching piece, yet his presence created another layer of tension. Golden State had reportedly communicated that it wanted to support him through rehabilitation and keep him involved in its plans. Trading him months after those assurances could damage trust throughout the locker room. The Warriors therefore faced a brutal decision. They could remain loyal to Butler, preserve their draft capital, and accept that the LeBron dream might disappear. Or they could abandon caution, send away their future, and create a short championship window built around aging stars with significant health concerns. Every option carried risk. If Davis stayed healthy, the Warriors could become immediate contenders. If injury struck, Golden State could be left with an expensive roster, limited depth, and no draft assets to rebuild. The most glamorous offseason plan in the NBA was quickly becoming a test of whether one final championship chase was worth sacrificing everything that came after. Jimmy Butler caught in the middle. While fans imagined LeBron throwing passes to Curry and Davis, Jimmy Butler was quietly becoming the human cost of Golden State's plan. Butler had arrived with the reputation of a player built for pressure. His career was defined by difficult playoff runs, physical defense, and a willingness to confront uncomfortable situations. Yet this time, the challenge was different. He was recovering from a torn ACL while hearing his name connected to a trade designed to attract another aging superstar. Publicly, Butler maintained the same controlled confidence that had followed him throughout his career. He understood that trade rumors were part of professional basketball. He had been moved before, doubted before, and placed in situations where organizations treated him as both a franchise leader and an expendable contract. Still, the timing mattered. Golden State had reportedly assured Butler that it valued him and planned to support his rehabilitation. Those words created an expectation of stability. If the Warriors suddenly included him in a package for Davis, the message would be unmistakable. Loyalty lasted only until a more attractive opportunity appeared. That contradiction could influence more than Butler's relationship with the front office. Players around the league watch how organizations treat injured veterans. Agents remember promises. Future free agents notice whether a franchise protects its people during vulnerable moments or immediately searches for an upgrade. But from Golden State's perspective, sentiment could not erase the mathematics. Davis earned nearly the same massive salary, making Butler one of the few realistic contracts capable of allowing the trade to work. Without Butler, constructing a legal package would become significantly more complicated and could require dismantling the supporting roster. The Warriors were trapped between reputation and ambition. Keeping Butler offered patience, continuity, and the possibility that he could return as the physical two-way force Curry needed. Trading him offered access to Davis, which could unlock LeBron and potentially create the league's most famous lineup. But fame does not guarantee durability. Davis had a long injury history. LeBron was entering his 24th season. Curry and Draymond had already absorbed years of postseason mileage. Golden State would be betting that four aging bodies could remain healthy at exactly the same time. One injury could ruin the experiment, two could turn it into a disaster. That reality forced the Warriors to ask the question hidden beneath every championship chase. Were they building the best team, or simply the most recognizable one? Washington's demands ensured Golden State could not avoid answering. To bring Davis and LeBron to the Bay, the Warriors would need to sacrifice Butler, their future flexibility, and perhaps the trust they had spent years building. The price was no longer theoretical. It had a face, a contract, and a name. Why the Warriors finally pulled back? Golden State's front office had spent years balancing two conflicting responsibilities: maximizing Stephen Curry's remaining championship window and protecting the franchise from a devastating collapse after it closed. The Davis trade forced those responsibilities into direct conflict. Washington reportedly refused to lower its demands. The Wizards knew the Warriors were not pursuing Davis in isolation. They understood that Davis might be the key to securing LeBron, and that urgency increased Golden State's willingness to negotiate. Every additional draft pick requested became part of a larger equation involving two superstar acquisitions rather than one, but the Warriors eventually reached a limit. Sending Butler and a mountain of draft capital for a 33-year-old big man with a history of injuries would have been dangerous even without LeBron attached. Doing it while hoping a 4-1-year-old free agent would then choose Golden State added another layer of uncertainty. There was no guarantee LeBron would sign after the Davis trade. He could still select Cleveland, Miami, Philadelphia, or another contender that offered a better family situation. Golden State might have surrendered its future only to discover that the player it was trying to attract had chosen somewhere else. That possibility changed everything. The Warriors reportedly stepped away when Washington maintained its enormous asking price. It was not a declaration that Davis lacked value. It was an acknowledgement that the total risk had become impossible to justify. Once Golden State backed away, the structure supporting the LeBron fantasy began to collapse. Without Davis, the Warriors could still offer Curry, Draymond, championship culture, and the Bay Area. What they could not clearly offer was the strongest roster available. Jimmy Butler's uncertain health remained a concern. The Western Conference demanded depth, size, and durability. Golden State could not assume that three legendary names would automatically defeat younger, faster, and deeper opponents over 4 playoff rounds. The Warriors had built an emotional recruiting pitch, but the financial reality refused to cooperate. That is why the Davis decision became the defining moment of the entire pursuit. It exposed the difference between interest and execution. Golden State genuinely wanted LeBron. Curry and Draymond genuinely believed the partnership could work. The front office genuinely explored the moves necessary to make it competitive. But wanting a superstar is not the same as being willing to destroy the future for him. By pulling back, the Warriors protected Butler, preserved valuable draft assets, and avoided one of the most dangerous all-in trades in recent memory. At the same time, they may have closed the only realistic path that could have convinced LeBron to choose them. The dream was still alive in headlines. Inside league circles, however, its foundation had already started disappearing. LeBron refuses to be rushed. While Golden State's pursuit became louder, LeBron James remained remarkably patient. That silence was not weakness or confusion. It was control. For the first time in years, LeBron reportedly held complete authority over his next destination. He was not tied to a long-term contract, waiting for a front office to negotiate a trade. He could listen to every pitch, evaluate every roster, and choose the environment that best matched his final professional goal. Teams reportedly communicated through Rich Paul, with some organizations sending personal voice messages from owners and presidents. The unusual process demonstrated how much influence LeBron still possessed. Even in the final stage of his career, franchises were willing to restructure their plans for one opportunity to place him on their roster. But LeBron's public comment suggested that the decision would not be driven by spectacle. He repeatedly emphasized patience. He wanted time to consider what his body could handle, what kind of daily environment would energize him, and whether a team could offer meaningful competition rather than a ceremonial farewell tour. Winning remained essential, but it was not his only concern. LeBron also described family as a central part of the decision. His wife and children had built their lives around Los Angeles, and moving to another city would affect far more than basketball. At 41, he did not need to prove that he could dominate another market. He needed a situation that felt right both professionally and personally. That complicated Golden State's pitch. The Warriors could offer Curry elite organizational history and the possibility of one final iconic partnership. But joining them would require LeBron to remain in the unforgiving Western Conference, adapt to another system, and potentially enter a roster with major health and depth concerns. Cleveland offered emotional history and proximity to his roots. Miami offered familiarity with a demanding culture that had once helped transform him into a champion. Philadelphia could offer Eastern Conference competition and a roster built around established stars. Each option carried a different meaning. Golden State's argument was based on basketball imagination. Cleveland's was based on homecoming. Miami's was based on unfinished emotional connection. Other contenders could present younger rosters, easier paths, or greater stability. LeBron understood that he might be making the final major decision of his career. There would be no reason to rush simply because social media wanted an answer. Every day he waited increased speculation. Every photograph, podcast, comment, and private meeting became evidence for another rumor. But LeBron was not choosing a thumbnail. He was choosing where to place the final chapter of one of the greatest careers basketball had ever witnessed. Cleveland and Miami move ahead as Golden State's path became increasingly complicated. Two familiar franchises began to emerge as stronger possibilities: the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Miami Heat. Both organizations represented more than basketball destinations. They represented defining chapters of LeBron's identity. Cleveland could offer the most emotional ending imaginable. LeBron had already returned once and delivered the championship that transformed his relationship with the city forever. A second return would not be about repairing a legacy. That work had already been completed in 2016. It would be about closing the circle. The Cavaliers could sell him on home, family, and history. His roots in Ohio remained powerful, and the possibility of finishing his career near Akron carried an emotional weight that Golden State could never reproduce. Cleveland would also allow him to compete in the Eastern Conference, where the path through the playoffs might be less physically punishing than the Western battle awaiting the Warriors. Miami offered a different kind of reunion. The Heat were where LeBron learned to operate inside a championship machine. Under Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra, he reached 4 consecutive NBA Finals and won 2 titles. The environment was demanding, structured, and familiar. Miami could promise accountability, warm weather, organizational stability, and a system capable of maximizing veteran players. For an older superstar, familiarity matters. LeBron would not need to learn how the Heat define professionalism. He had already lived it. Golden State, meanwhile, remained connected to the most exciting basketball possibility. Curry and LeBron together would attract enormous attention and create combinations no defense had ever prepared to stop across an entire season. But the Warriors' situation appeared less secure after the Davis discussion stalled. The Cavaliers and Heat did not necessarily need a second blockbuster trade merely to become credible options. They could make their pitch around what already existed rather than asking LeBron to trust that several dangerous moves would eventually succeed. That difference was critical. Golden State's plan depended on dominoes. First, acquire Davis, then convince LeBron, then hope the aging roster remained healthy, then build enough depth around 4 expensive veterans to survive the playoffs. Cleveland and Miami could present more direct paths. Join us, fit into the roster, and compete. LeBron's preference for patience, winning, comfort, and family appeared to align naturally with those Eastern Conference possibilities. That did not eliminate Golden State, but it weakened the idea that the Warriors were the obvious destination. The most dramatic pairing was not necessarily the most practical one, and as the league waited, the story began shifting away from whether Curry and LeBron wanted to play together toward whether Golden State had ever possessed the resources to make that desire matter. The headline was bigger than the evidence. The LeBron to Golden State rumor exploded because every piece sounded believable. LeBron was available, Draymond was recruiting him, Curry publicly welcomed the idea, the Warriors explored a trade for Anthony Davis. Put those details together, and fans quickly assumed the move was already happening. But nothing was complete. LeBron was an unrestricted free agent, meaning he would normally sign with a team rather than be traded. A sign and trade was possible, but no agreement had been finalized. Golden State's interest was real. Draymond created flexibility, Curry gave the recruitment credibility, and the front office investigated major roster changes. However, the Warriors never landed Davis, LeBron never signed, and the dream lineup remained hypothetical. The rumor became powerful because LeBron and Curry had spent years as rivals. Watching them become teammates would have felt like the final chapter of an entire NBA generation. But front offices cannot build teams through emotion alone. Contracts, health, roster depth, and draft capital matter. The headline promised a completed super team. The evidence showed something very different: serious interest, difficult negotiations, and a plan that began falling apart before reaching the finish line. Where the situation truly stands, Golden State genuinely wanted LeBron James. Curry was open to the partnership. Draymond actively recruited him. The Warriors explored a massive trade for Anthony Davis to make their roster more attractive, but Washington reportedly demanded Jimmy Butler, multiple first-round picks, and future draft assets. Golden State decided the price was too dangerous. That decision protected the franchise, but it also weakened its chances of signing LeBron. Without Davis, the Warriors could still offer Curry, Draymond, championship experience, and enormous attention. What they could not clearly offer was the strongest path to another title. LeBron continued evaluating teams based on winning, family, comfort, and organizational stability. Those priorities appeared to give Cleveland and Miami strong advantages. Golden State therefore remained a possible destination, but not a clear favorite. The Warriors faced a difficult truth. They could sacrifice years of their future for one final championship attempt, or protect the organization from a painful collapse after its legendary core retired. For now, the LeBron-Curry partnership remains a dream built on real conversations but no completed deal. Until a contract is signed, LeBron and Curry remain Olympic teammates, historic rivals, and the center of one of the offseason's biggest rumors. The final lesson behind the rumor: the idea of LeBron James joining Stephen Curry created one of the most exciting possibilities in modern NBA history. Their skills could have complemented each other perfectly. Curry's shooting would create space for LeBron, while LeBron's passing would produce open shots for Curry. Adding Anthony Davis and Draymond Green could have formed an extraordinary championship core. But championships are not won by famous names alone. Teams also need health, depth, defense, shooting, and reliable role players. Trading Jimmy Butler and years of draft assets for Davis could have made Golden State dangerous, but it also could have left the franchise exposed to injuries and without a future. That is why the Warriors' decision to step back deserves respect. Supporting Curry does not mean making every desperate move. Sometimes the smartest decision is knowing when the risk has become too great. LeBron's patience also carries an important lesson. Winning matters, but so do family, health, trust, and peace of mind. The loudest opportunity is not always the best one. Fans should debate the basketball without attacking the people involved. These decisions affect players, families, teammates, and entire organizations. Comment 1 if Golden State was right to protect its future, or 2 if the Warriors should have risked everything for one final championship. Like the video, share it with another NBA fan, and subscribe for the next major story shaking the league.